So 5.2 is probably the most common type of factoring that you're going to encounter in college algebra. And that's when you have three terms of trinomial. And what we do is we take the three terms and we turn it into a four-term type of problem, and we factor by grouping. And how we do that is we split the middle. So for three terms, what we do is we call this splitting the middle. So this is what we're going to be doing, is we're going to be splitting the middle up for three terms. So when you have three terms, step number one, just the same as you did for when you had four terms, is you take out the greatest common factor if possible. Okay, so the first thing you do is you always take out the greatest common factor if possible. A lot of times you're not going to be able to, but in many cases there'll be a variable or a number or a combination of them that will come out. Step number two is you're going to split the middle. And we'll learn how to do that today. So you're going to be splitting the middle term up. Step number three is you factor by grouping. And then again, step number four is you factor again and rewrite.
I'm sorry.
Oh, no problem. Okay, so this is what we're going to be doing. We're going to be learning a whole new way of factoring. When we have three terms, what we basically do is we split it and make it four so that we can factor by grouping. So whenever we have three terms, we have to split the middle up so we can get four terms, and then we learn how to factor it by grouping. And this involves a little bit of guessing and checking different numbers to see how we can split the middle up. So we're going to start off with some very, very basic ones, and then we'll look at some more advanced ones. But they're all the same. You take the three terms, take out the greatest common factor first, if there is one. And again, in many cases, there is not a greatest common factor. But if there is one, always get that first. That way it becomes a smaller, easier to handle and work with problem. Then you split the middle up, factor it by grouping, factor again, and rewrite your answer. We're going to look now on page 355, and we're going to begin. We're not going to cover all of this section today, but we'll get through a lot of it. We're going to look on page 355. We're going to start with question 20. So we've got z squared plus 2z minus 24. How we approach this problem is based upon the number of terms that we have. So before break, we learned about four terms, and we factored them by grouping. This one has three terms. And again, terms are going to be separated by addition or subtraction. So we have 1, 2, 3 terms. Always check first to see if any number or variable can come out. In this case, no number or no variable can come out. We need to split this up so we can get four terms, so we can then factor it by grouping. If there's no number at the beginning, then we'll put the 1 here. So if there's no number, put the 1. And we take the first number times the last number. Okay, so we take the first number, and if there was a different number in front, you'd multiply. But in this case, we have the 1 times a negative 24, and that's going to make it a minus 24. Now, here's where we have to figure out the numbers that are going to make it work. So we know the number inside the box, well, this is negative. So we need two numbers that multiply together to get negative. How can you get two numbers that multiply together to get negative? Well, if you have two negative numbers, what do they come out to be when you multiply them together? Positive. Okay, we don't want positive, we want a negative. So since this is negative, you're going to have one positive and one negative. Okay? If it was positive, they would be the same. But the sign in the middle is negative. Now, inside the box, we look at our term in the middle. And what's the term in the middle? What's the sign of the term in the middle? No. Let me say it correctly. Okay, so this is the number inside the box. This is negative, so that tells us one is positive, one is negative. Now we go back to our original trinomial here, and we look at our middle. Our middle number is positive, so that means the larger number is positive, smaller number is negative. What we need now is we need two numbers that multiply to give 24. Or sorry, negative 24 there, and add to give 2. So they're going to multiply together to give you this number in the box, and they're going to add together to give you that 2 in the middle. So multiply together to give you here, add together to give you there. Now, we know that this 24 is negative inside the box. So that tells me that one of the numbers is positive, one of the numbers is negative. Larger number is positive because it's in the middle. Now, what two numbers multiply together to give you 24, the negative 24 there, and add together to give you 2? Well, how about positive 6 and negative 4? Okay, because positive 6 times negative 4, well, what's positive 6 times negative 4? Negative 24. That is what is in the box here. And what about 6 minus 4? Well, 6 minus 4 is a 2, and that is your middle part here. Once we do a lot of these, it'll get a lot easier. It's just a matter of finding the numbers. Now, we now know our numbers are going to be a positive 6 and a negative 4. And so now we take our middle and we can split it up. Okay, this is called splitting the middle. So this z squared stays in front, and then we take this 2z and we split it up into 6z, a minus 4z, and a minus 24. Because 6z minus 4z, that gives you the 2z in the middle. So we took the middle and we split it up. Now, once you split it up, now you can factor by grouping. So the first two pieces, now that we've got our 4 terms, what can factor out of the first two pieces here? These have a what in common? A z is in common, and so what's left over? Looks like z plus 6, right? Next two pieces, on these, if it begins with a negative, you're going to have to factor out a negative. So what do they have in common? They have a negative 4 in common. And so what's left over then? Take out a negative. Negative 4 divided by negative 4, that leaves you with a 1z. And negative 24 divided by negative 4, that leaves you with a positive 6. Okay, are my groupings the same? Are my parentheses now the same? Yes, these are the same, right? So z plus 6 comes out. And what's left over? Z what? Minus 4. There's your final, finished, factored answer. It's just a matter of figuring out now how to split that middle up. And we're going to do a lot of these today, and we're going to do more of them as a review tomorrow. Or not tomorrow, but next week as well. Okay, let's try another one. This one's going to have a positive. And let's look at question 21. P squared plus 15p plus 56. Same procedure that we just did a moment ago. We'll put the 1 in front. And now we multiply. So 1 times that 56. That makes it a 56. And we always check first to make sure nothing comes out. Nothing comes out at the very beginning, right? If it did, we would take it out at the beginning. Nothing comes out, though. Always check that first. First times the last is a 56. Now, this 56 is positive. Since the number is positive, the 56 is positive, both are positive or both are negative. Okay, so that 56 inside that box is positive. So that means they either have to both be positive or both be negative. What's the sign in the middle? Sign in the middle is positive, right? So since the middle's positive, we know that since the middle's positive, we know both of them in this case will be positive. If this would have been a minus 15 in the middle, we would have them both be negative. But the 15 is positive, 56 is positive in the middle, in the box here, so we know both of them are positive. Now, what do we want? We want two numbers again that multiply to give 56 and sum to 15. So multiply together to give you the number in the box, sum together to give you the number in the middle. We know that they're both positive. Why? Because how can you get a positive when you multiply? Either both positive or both negative. You know, the sign in the middle is positive, so they're both going to be positive. Now, what two numbers are going to work? If you can't find them, then you start dividing. 56 is an even number. Okay, so let's start with 56 and let's divide it by 2. 2 and 28. Well, 2 and 28, does that give you 15? Nope. So now we move up. How about we try a 3? 3 doesn't go in there. How about we try a 4? 4 and 14. Okay, 4 and 14 gives you what? 16, but we need what? 15. So we're close. Let's try a 6 now. 6 doesn't work. Let's try a, how about a 7? 7 and 8. Okay? What does that give you? 7 and 8, when we add 7 and 8 together, what does that give you? 7 plus 8 gives you what? 15. 7 times 8 gives you what? 56. So what are my two numbers? Okay, 8 and 7. I always write the larger one first. That way you don't have to worry about the signs. Here's how you can check. 7 times 8 is 56. 8 plus 7 is 15. That's what I want. I want the 56 and I want the 15. Now, split it up. And that gives you a p squared. Then we're going to split that 15 up into 8p, right? And a 7p, because those add together to give you 15p. And then we've got our plus 56. Now we factor by grouping. First two pieces. What can come out of here? Looks like a p can come out. And what's left over? P plus 8. Next two pieces. What can come out of here? I'm going to give you a hint here. Okay, now, look at this one. This is a 7p. I want to get the p here. So this one's a p, this one's a 7p. So that means I need to factor out a 7 because I need to make sure that I get a p by itself to match up with this one. So when we look at these numbers, we better be able to factor out a 7. So I'm going to factor out a 7, and that's going to leave you with a p. And then 56 divided by 7, that's a 8. Are my groupings the same? Yes, they are. So p plus 8 comes down, gone and gone, and what's left over? P plus 7, and that's going to be your final factored answer. The hardest part is always splitting up the middle. Once you understand that concept of how to get them to multiply together and add together, it's not difficult. And then it's just factor by grouping, and it's easy. Sometimes, though, to try to find the numbers can be a little bit of a challenge. Okay, let's try another one. How about 25? They're all similar, but yet a little bit different. 25 is a squared minus 2ab minus 35 b squared. Put the 1 in front, and now we multiply. First times the last is a minus 35. So it's a minus inside, so that means that in the box, so that means 1 is positive, 1 is negative. We look at the sign in the middle. Sign in the middle is negative, so that means a larger number is negative. Smaller number then must be positive. How do I begin trying to factor this out? Well, when I look at that 35, I notice that 35 ends in a 5. If it ends in a 0, I'm going to usually try multiples of 5 and 10. If it ends in a 5, I'm going to try multiples of 5 because I'll find it that way. If it's an even number, I'm going to start with multiples of 2. So 2, 4, 6, 8, and so on. If it's an odd number, then I try other odd numbers like 7 and 13 and numbers like that. So this is 35. So how about we start with the 5? So let's see what we get when we take 35, divide that by 5. What do we get when we take 35 divided by 5? We get 7. Now, 7 minus 5 gives you what? 2. And that's what we want. Now, we know that the 2 is negative in the middle, so that means my larger number is a negative 7. Smaller number is a positive 5. And we can check this because minus 7 plus 5, well, that's a minus 2, and that checks with that. And then minus 7 times 5, what is that? Minus 35, and that matches up with that. Split our middle up, and be careful with the variables. So splitting up the middle, we have a squared, and then we have a minus 7, ab, a positive 5, ab, and a minus 35, b squared. So we split that middle up. And now we factor. First two pieces. The only thing that's going to be in common here is an A, and what's left over? Looks like A minus 7B, so that's going to come out, or sorry, be left over. And the next two pieces, we have a 5 and a 35, so we have a 5 in common, and these both have a B, so B will come out as well. What is left over then? A minus 7B, when we divide that out. And are the groupings the same? Yes, they are. So now we have for a final answer A minus 7B and A plus 5B. Now let's look at one where we have a number in front. Question 34. This one has a number in front. It's going to be done the exact same way. It's just that now instead of having to add in the 1, we won't have to because we have a number there. So question 34. 8k squared plus 34k plus 35. Okay, so in this one, we don't have to put the 1 in there, and this one's going to be a little bit more of a challenge. The numbers are going to get a little bit larger, but it can still be done. So what we do is we approach it the exact same way. 8, 34, and 35. Nothing's in common, right? So nothing comes out. Nothing comes out, so then we multiply. 8 times that 35. Okay, 8 times that 35, that gives you a 280. Well, 280 is positive. They either are both positive or both negative. What's the sign in the middle? Right in the middle is a positive. So that tells me that my two numbers are positive. Now, if this would have been a minus 34, then they would both be negative. But ours is positive, so they're both positive. Why are they both the same? Because this 280 is positive. Now we start. Okay, 280 ends in a 0. So it's got to have either a factor of 5 or a factor of 10 in there. Let's start with 5. Okay, we can start with 10, but let's start with 5. Okay, 5 and 56. Does that give you 34? No. Okay, let's try 10. 10 and 28. Okay, 10 and 28 still doesn't give you that 34, does it? Because that's 38. Let's try 15. Okay, 15 doesn't go in there. What do we have here? If we go up to 20. So 15 didn't work, so we went up to 20. Okay, if I did 20, what do I have? 20 and 14. 20 and 14, what do they add together to give you? 34. That's what we want. So we need a 20 and a 14. That's going to make it work. So that's where we're going to begin. 20 and 14. How do we know? 20 plus 14 is 34. That checks out. 20 times 14 is 280. That checks. So then what do? Split the middle up. So 8k squared plus 20k plus 14k plus 35. And you split that middle up because 20 plus 14 gives you that 34. So that's why you split it up. Middle variable was k, so the k's come down. Now we factor by grouping. First two pieces, what can I factor out? Can someone tell me? This way I'm not going too fast. What I've got underlined, what can come out of here? Okay, 4 and what else? 4 and a k. That leaves you then with, you take out a 4k, that leaves you with a 2k, and 20 divided by 4 is a 5. Next two pieces, what comes out? Okay, take out a 7, and that leaves you with a 2k plus 5. Are my groupings the same? Yep, they better be. So 2k plus 5 comes out, and what's left over? 4k plus 7. No, it does not. It does not matter. It doesn't matter the order inside of each parentheses, and it doesn't matter which set goes first. Just make sure you don't mix them up. Like, don't put the 4k and the 5 together. Right? So you just need to make sure that these go together here and those go together there. You could put the 5 plus 2k first if you wanted to, but normally we write the variable first. But don't mix up the groupings, but the order doesn't matter. I could have put the 4k plus 7 out in front, and that would be exactly the same as this. So order does not matter because all of this is commutative. And commutative means I can switch the order. Okay. Let's now move on and do another one here. So that was 34. Let's look at, how about 39? Okay, let's look at 39 here. For question 39, we have a 36 m squared minus 60m plus 25. Okay, so we're going to look at this one. Now, first thing we look at is, can we factor any number out? Doesn't look like we can factor anything out, right? Nothing's in common. So what do? We take the first times the what? Last. So first times the last, that's 36 times 25. That's 900. So what do we know about the 900 here? 900 is positive. So since it is positive, they're either going to be both positive or both negative. Well, what do we know about the sign in the middle? The sign that goes with that 60, that's negative. So that means they're both going to be negative. I'm going to show you a quicker way to do this one. Now notice this one ends in a double zero. So let's look at 9 and the 6 here. So I want you to see things. So we've got this double zero here. So let's look at the 9 and the 6. What two numbers would multiply together to give you 9, add together to give you 6? 3 and 3, right? Okay. This double zero here, and we've got the 60 here, we can split this up into 30 and 30, right? Because we can take this 0, we can split it up, and I looked at the 9 and the 6, and I said that's 3 and 3. Okay? So we got the double zero, so the 60, we could split that up into 30 and 30. You could have also just tried factors of 10 until you got it. 10, 20, and you would eventually got it with 30. We know that they're both negative because the sign in the middle is negative, right? And we can check because minus 30 minus 30, that's a minus 60, that works. and minus 30 times a minus 30. That's positive 900, and that works for the box. So we know we're on the right track. Now what do? We again split the middle up. So we've got 36m squared. We have a minus 30m, a minus 30m, and 25. Factor. We have to make sure we take out the largest number in common. So we've got a 36 and a 30. What would we want to take out of here? 36 and a 30. What can come out? Well, we wouldn't want to take out a 2 because we can take out something bigger. You always have to take out the largest number. So a 36 and a 30. The largest number that's in common with both of these is going to be a 6. What else do they have in common? They have an m. Now we rewrite. So 36 divided by 6, that makes it a 6m. And negative 30 divided by 6, that makes it a minus 5. Next two pieces, it begins with a negative. If it begins with a negative, factor out a negative. Then we have a 30 and a 25. What do they have in common? 5. So we're going to take out a negative 5 because it begins with a negative. So we took out that negative 5. Now what's left over? Well, 30 divided by negative 5. Or sorry, negative 30 divided by negative 5. Negative and negative makes it a positive. And 30 divided by 5 is a 6m. They're matching. That's what we want. 25 divided by negative 5, that leaves you with a negative 5. Are my groupings here the same? Yes, they are. So that's a 6m minus 5. Gone and gone. What's left over? 6m minus 5. And I picked this one because what do you notice about these two? They're the same. So I can rewrite that one more time as 6m minus 5 quantity squared. Now let's look at one where we're going to have to factor out some things at the very beginning. So let's look now at, let's look at 47. Okay, let's look at question 47 here. So all the others that we've done, we have not had to factor anything out. Right? At the very beginning, we've not had to take any greatest common factors out. But question 47, we're going to have to take out a greatest common factor. These numbers are really large to begin with. And I really don't want to have to take 15 times 120. Because that's going to give me a really large number. But what I can do is I can factor something out. Now also, if it ever begins with a negative, you're going to want to factor out a negative to make it easier. So it begins with a negative. Now what do we have? We have a 15, a 70, and a 120. These all have a 5 as a multiple of them, right? So they all have a 5 in common. Begins with a negative. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take out a negative 5. And that's all I can take out. This is going to make our numbers dramatically easier to deal with. 15, okay, divide that by 5. Let's make sure we can't take anything else larger out. Nope, that's all we can take out. We can't take a 15 out because 15 doesn't go into those. We can take out the negative 5. So 15 divided by 5. Well, that leaves you with a 3. Right? Negative and negative makes it a positive. So that's a positive 3a squared there. Then we've got negative 70 divided by negative 5. If you need to, you can use a calculator. Negative and negative, of course, makes it positive. So that's going to be a positive 14a. And then we've got 120. Divide that by that 5. 1 negative keeps it negative at a negative 24. Now, since we factored out that negative 5, the numbers are dramatically smaller. We're not having to take 15 times 120. All we now have to do is take 3 times a negative 24. It's going to make it a lot easier. That's why we take out that greatest common factor. So now we'll take our 3 times that 24. We know our number's negative. I never put negatives in the calculator. I always keep track of the sign mentally. So we know 3 times a negative 24, well, that's a negative 72. So we've got a negative 72. We know this is negative. So since it is negative, what do we know? We know one number's positive, one number's negative. What's the sign in the middle? Positive. Larger numbers positive, smaller numbers negative. Okay, let's work with this 72. It's an even number. Let's try 4. I don't know if 4 work. We're going to try 4. 4 and 18, and it happens to work, right? When we could have started with 2, but I said, well, we'll just start with 4. Because it's even. 4 and 18, well, that's going to work because 18 minus 4, that's 14, matches with the middle. And 18 times a negative 4, well, that's a negative 72, and it matches with that in the box. Now, don't worry about the negative 5 in front because it's just going to come along for the ride. So the negative 5, it just stays out in front till the very end. Next, we're going to split the middle up again. And we've got 3a squared plus 18a minus 4a minus 24. We can factor this by grouping. So we should be able to take a 3a out, and that's going to leave you with an a plus, 6 here it looks like. Next two pieces, it begins with a negative. We need an a, so we're going to have to factor in a negative 4. And that's going to leave you then with an a, and minus 24 divided by minus 4, that leaves you with a positive 6. These parentheses had better be the same. If they are not, you made a mistake. So if they're not the same, you made a mistake somewhere. So a plus 6 comes out, gone and gone. What's left over? 3a minus 4. And do not forget what's out in front of all of it, minus 5. We'll do one more, then we'll talk about our homework, and I'll pass back all of your graded homework and your exams, because I think almost everyone has taken the exam now, so I've got everything graded. If you've turned things in, I'll pass it back to you before you leave today. So let's do one more of these. And let's look at, let's look at a little bit more of a challenging one. Just because of the variables. How about question 59? Question 59 is 12p to the 6th minus 32p cubed r plus 5r squared. first things first, we check and we see if anything will come out. And 12, 32, and 5, they have nothing in common. This one doesn't have a P and this one doesn't have an R, so nothing is going to come out. It just looks more complicated because of all the powers, but it's not. It's not going to be any more difficult than the others. Nothing comes out. We take the first times the last. So 12 times 5, that gives you that 60, doesn't it? 12 times 5, that gives you that 60. It's a positive 60. So that goes in the box over here. So positive 60. We know then it's either both positive or both negative. And how do we determine which one? We look in the middle. Middle's negative, so these are both going to be negatives. All right, so where do we begin? Well, it ends in a 0. So if it ends in a 0, we're going to try multiples of 5 and 10. So let's start with 60. All right, and we're going to take this 60 and we're going to divide it by 5. 5 and 12. Okay, 5 and 12, that gives you 17. We needed a 32. So let's try a 10. 10 is not going to work either. So 10 and 6 gives you 16. We need a 32. Let's try a 15. 15 and 4. Nope, still doesn't work. How about we try a 20? 20 and 3. Still doesn't work. Okay, let's try 25, won't go in there, right? But what about 30? 30 and what? 2. Does that give me the 32 when I add them together? Yep. Okay, so what are my two numbers? 30 and 2. They're both negative. Why? Because my middle's negative, right? And these are positive. That 60 is positive, so they're the same. And we can always check. Because minus 30 minus 2 is minus 32. That matches. And minus 30 times a minus 2 gives you a positive 60, which matches with the box. Split it up. And we now have 12 p to the 6th. We have a minus. Now the variables stay the same. So this minus 32 p cubed r, we're going to split that up into a minus 30 p cubed r and a minus 2 p cubed r. And then we still have the 5r squared on the end. Looks a little bit more complicated because of the variables, but it's really not. What can come out? Can someone tell me what comes out of the underlined part here? Okay, a 6 can come out, and what else? Yep, and we always take out the smallest power, which is p cubed. So we want to take out a 6p cubed there. And 12 divided by 6 is a 2. P to the 6th, we're taking out 3 of them, so that leaves you with a 2p cubed left. And we have a minus. Okay, 30 divided by 6, that's a 5. P cubed is gone, but we still have an r left over. It begins with a negative, so we're going to have to factor in a negative. And what else? Looks like they have an r in common. So the r comes out with it. We're factoring out a negative. So negative 2 divided by negative 1, that leaves you with a positive 2. The r's go away, so positive 2p cubed. See, they're matching. 5 divided by negative 1, that leaves you with a minus 5. We've got an r squared. Taking out an r, that leaves you with an r left over. Now, what do you notice? Are the groupings the same? Yes, they are. So that's 2p cubed minus 5r and 6p cubed minus r. Okay, so let's now look at our homework, and we can do a lot of these from our homework. I gave you a lot of homework questions out of 5-2. 5-1 we can completely do because we've already done all of 5-1. So let's talk about our homework quickly here. So today we covered 5-1, and you should be able to do them all. 5-2, we covered most of them, but I'm just going to have you do about half of them. So let's have you, I'm going to have you do, how about 1 through 13, but don't do 9. So do not do question 9. 10. We'll cover 10 next time. So everything but 10. So do not do that question number 10. So that gives you about half of them to work through. We should have covered all of them except for question 10. And we'll look at something like question 10 next time. And same thing with 20. If you want to go ahead and work ahead, you can. But you probably can't do 20 yet or 10. We'll cover those next time. But we're still going to do more of these next time, so I'll just split it in half. So just try to do 1 through 13, but skip question 10 for right now. And I do have quite a bit of homework to pass back. If you have not turned in your homework from Chapter 2, make sure I get that. That way I can get it graded. I should have everything graded here. Everything's been recorded in your gradebook in Canvas, so you can always go look at your grades in Canvas and see what your overall scores are.